Hi guys, and welcome to the channel. Today we are going to be replacing the battery in a 2013 MacBook Air. The battery is degraded over time and it now lasts about 10 minutes on a single charge without being plugged in. So what we do first is turn the laptop upside down to get at the screws. The screw heads on the bottom of this are the number 5 star. So we've got my Ifixit toolkit there. It's a little older one. We will have the new Ifixit kit in the description if you are interested in getting one. They come in super handy to fix all sorts of devices. But here we're using the number 5 star, as you can see here, to unscrew the base plate of the MacBook Air. It's important that you note that the 2 screws closest to the hinge, which we will get to in just a second, those 2 screws are longer than the other. So this screw here, which I notice here is longer than the others, as well as the screw right next to it, closest to the hinge, is longer than the remaining 8 screws that are in the bottom of the laptop. So there's a total of 10 screws, 8 are short, 2 of them are long. So now we're just going to go through and remove the rest of the screws going around the bottom of the plate. And then once we have all the screws out, there's a couple of snaps closest to the hinge that pop off, and then you can remove the bottom plate. That exposes the motherboard and the battery. The battery is one large piece with those 4 separate cells in it. And then here is the new battery that I purchased online from Amazon. The description will be in the link will be in the description of the video below. And then here there's a plastic tab to pull the old battery out and disconnect it. Then there are 5 screws that hold the battery in place. The 2 farthest from the hinge, so the 2 where the little notch is in the base where the mouse pad is, those are smaller, or shorter, than the 2 screws that are closest to the hinge. Also, these screws are T5 screws as opposed to just 5. So the T5 screws to get the battery out, there are 5 total. There are the 2 short ones farthest from the hinge, 2 long ones closest to the hinge, and then 1 right in the middle of the battery where there's a plastic little arm, and that one holds the battery in place in the middle. So the good thing about this battery is there is no adhesive on the underside, so we didn't have to heat it up or pry it up or anything to get the battery out. Just once all these screws are out, you're able to just kind of lift the whole battery out. So I did it by just grabbing a little power tab, pull it up, and you can see the old battery. The new battery has the plastic over the individual cells. I left it on because I don't see a downside to having it on, or having it off. But I guess that's personal preference. You can take it off or leave it on. As you can see, I started to pull it off and decided, well, it doesn't really matter to me one way or the other. Shouldn't affect it, so I just left it off. And then you obviously put the battery back in the same position, and then I went ahead and loosely put in the screws in the middle, and then the large screws in the top and the short screws on the bottom. I didn't torque any of these screws down yet as I assumed there would be a little bit of play in order to get it positioned right where you want it. So I put the screws in opposite corners to make sure that I was in a centralized location for the battery. And then here we finish up putting the last one in. And now, after we have all of them loosely in, I wanted to make sure that everything was tight. Then I went around and tightened every screw down and just torqued it down about finger tightness. Not anything, super strong, but enough to make sure it's not going to go anywhere as I move the laptop around. And then again, I went in kind of this crisscross pattern to ensure that I didn't over tighten it on one side or the other prior to being connected. Then we're going to go ahead and slide the battery connection back into the hole. It literally just slides horizontally out and then slides horizontally in. So you got to work it in to line it up, and once you have it lined up, you can just slide it into position. And there we got it in position. Slide it in with a little bit of finger tension, my thumbnails, and get it lined up, and then straighten up the cable. And then what I did here, this is my personal preference, is I went ahead before putting the base plate on. I wanted to make sure that it worked. It's not going to do me any good if it doesn't turn on after I put a new battery in, or it needs to be plugged in all the time. So what I experienced here is after the battery replacement, I did need to plug it in to wake it up to get the laptop to acknowledge that a new battery was in it. The second I plugged it in, it booted up immediately and recognized the new battery, and then obviously we're on the lock screen there, and then the battery was at about 60%. So as some people will tell you, with lithium-ion batteries, it is important to charge them to 100% the first time you use them. So I'm going to disconnect the battery here, and then I'm going to put the base plate back on, and then being sure to put the long screws in the holes closest to the hinge and snapping the two snaps that are near the hinge back on before screwing it on. And then once we get it all put back together, we're going to go ahead and leave it plugged in while the laptop is off. So I'm going to leave the laptop in the off position and charge it until it is fully charged. So for this, I just let it charge overnight, and then the next morning we had a fully charged battery. And then what I did there is I used it and let it die down on battery power only to get it as close as I could to zero, so that if it was going to experience battery memory, which lithium ion normally does not, but if it was, then I'd be able to have shown the battery where the bottom is, where the top is, and then we'll get significantly longer battery life out of this laptop. So like I said beforehand, we were getting about 10 minutes of battery life in battery only mode when it wasn't plugged in. And so now, I'm getting a solid 10 hours of normal use, I would say, from this laptop. So very impressive. We get about a 10 times increase in battery life, and so I view this as a success. Now when I'm traveling and need to use my computer, I won't have to have it plugged in all the time. Now as you see, I loosely put in all the screws. Now I'm going around and tightening each one, just finger tight again, just like we did the battery. And there you go. It's all set and done. Let it plugged in and charge. Thank you everybody for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share this video to help the channel as I make more and more content that will be beneficial for you and others. Thanks everybody. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.